Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome into To The Point. Hope you're all doing well as we head into another star-studded football weekend. We have a lot to talk about today. Different games to break down, injuries to talk about, spreads to look at. We got some large spreads this weekend in both college and the NFL that I think we will be able to capitalize on. So best bets coming, UFC at the Apex this coming weekend, a couple interesting battles. So we will talk about those as well. The Blue Jays lose last night. Garrett Cole throws an absolute gem for the Yankees. Might lock him up the American League Cy Young. He's been great all season long while the team has been truly dreadful. The Blue Jays open a series tonight at the Trop against the Rays. We got the Orioles and the Rays are still in a battle for top spot in the entire American League. So that is very much up for grabs in the last week and change of the season. The Cubs lost again to the Pirates. They open up a series this afternoon against the Rockies in a very important series for them that they need to find a way to get some wins. So D-backs are in the Bronx. So baseball is top of mind. It is interesting. NHL preseason opens actually about 1 a.m. tonight. There's a game in Australia between Arizona and the Los Angeles Kings at Rod Laver Arena. Apparently the ice isn't all that good. Who would have thought that? It's in Australia. But they're scheduled to play some games, so we'll see if it happens. But that's the news outside of football that we're going to talk about today because it's a Friday. You know what happens here on Fridays? We talk gambling. We talk about the best bets going into the weekend. And before we get there, let's talk about last night's Thursday night football game in the Bay Area between the New York Giants and the San Francisco 49ers. It went about the way I expected it to go. I will say I thought the Giants would have lost the game by more points. And I think if you look at the overall numbers, if you look at the box score, you go, how did the Giants only lose by this margin? They had their third straight game where the New York Giants did not get 100 yards of offense in the first half. That's hard to do, by the way. And yes, the Giants lost by 18, and they weren't competitive, and Daniel Jones did not have a good game, and they didn't have Saquon Barkley, and they didn't have Andrew Thomas, and they lost players throughout the game because it's a Thursday night and people get banged up. But if you look at it and go, in totality, the Giants had 150 total yards, and San Francisco had 441. That sounds like 40-0. That sounds Cowboys against Giants in week 1. 26 first downs for San Francisco to 10 for the Giants. Time of possession 39-10 to 20-50 for the entire game. San Francisco, here's the thing, they're 3-0 and they are the best team in football. Brock Purdy in his career only has one loss as a starting quarterback, and that was in the playoff game last year against Philadelphia. And he didn't finish the game because he tore his UCL. So in games that he has started and finished, he has not lost as an NFL quarterback, which is superb. And they were without Brandon Ayuk last night, and they're without different pieces. They're without a starting offensive lineman, so they're missing some people, but yet they still win by 18 points. Here's what I took from last night's game. Deebo Samuel finished with 129 yards receiving, and that looks great on paper. 6 catches for $129 and a touchdown. Brock Purdy and Deebo Samuel, outside of quick slants or screens, I don't think the two have a great combination. I don't think the two overall play that well together. Brock Purdy loves Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk's numbers soared after Brock Purdy became the starting quarterback, and he loves throwing the ball to Juwan Johnson Juwan Jennings. Juwan Johnson's the tight end for the Saints. Juwan Jennings on third down because Juwan Jennings led the NFL in third down receptions last year. He had 4 of them last night. So Debo is kind of the other piece. He's the third wheel, if you will. He's there, but he's not the most important player. He's not the guy that everybody relies on 100% of the time. And he kind of gets lost in it. You see him when he's running routes down the field. The Giants were physical last night. Adoree Jackson played really well considering Deonte Banks was solid before he was injured during the game. They gave him a tough time because I don't think the timing was all the way there for the both of them. I don't think Brock Purdy played that great last night, quite frankly, because if they did, San Francisco would have won by more than 18 points. And yes, it's a Thursday night and you blow it off and you're 3-0 and you're happy about it. And I'm not just trying to find faults, but that's what I think. Ayuk is more and more important because I don't know if Debo is the guy that San Francisco wants to rely on long term. To back up my point, here's the splits for Debo. 2021, the starting quarterback was Jimmy Garoppolo. Debo had 77 receptions, 1,405 yards receiving. All career highs, had a career high in touchdowns, targets. Jimmy Garoppolo and Debo Samuel were simpatico. He loved playing with Jimmy because Jimmy was going to give him the football. 2022, Brock Purdy takes over. Debo has 56 catches and only 632 yards receiving. He missed 3 games, but that's still a drop. He's not getting that chunky yardage in those 3 games. So I just don't think Brock and Debo have a great connection. And it might not mean a thing because Nick Bosa is the overall game wrecker. He did it a bunch last night. He only got a sack in the game. But what he does to the opposing line, then you see Javon Hargrave in the middle of that defense completely wreck Daniel Jones. It's impressive what San Francisco can do. The weakness of their teams, they give up just quick throws. They will give up receptions. They can play a little tentative on defense. But you look around, and even with Debo and Brock Purdy not being completely on the same page, Christian McCaffrey is such a weapon, such a factor. His ability to run after contact and not being the biggest guy in the world is so impressive. He changes drives. It makes it really hard to game plan because he is just a force. Whether he's running the football, he's catching the football, he is going to get extra yardage and make it more difficult on opposing quarterbacks. And he's so tough to stop. And the Giants, they can't stop the run. They haven't so far this year. They didn't against the Cowboys. They really didn't against Arizona early in that game. And the Giants have played 12 quarters of football this year, and they really have only played 1 and 3 minutes of good football. A really great fourth quarter against Arizona. The last 3 minutes of the third quarter and the other quarters have been crap. Less than 100 yards on offense, 3 straight first halves. That's just completely unacceptable. This is well known in the NFL. Your first drive is scripted before the game starts. You run it in practice and scout team so that it's just well known. When you get into the game, you know the play calls and you go through the first drive like you did in that last practice. And yet, seemingly every first drive for the Giants, there's confusion. They take a penalty. There's a false start. Daniel Jones makes an errant throw. They can't run the football between the tackles. And for some reason, Daniel Jones and the offense, they stopped using his legs. He doesn't have to run every play, but I think he needs to be able to throw passes on the run. Daniel Jones last night ran the ball twice for 5 yards. That's not going to work. Passing goes 22 for 32, 4 yards per average throw. That's nothing. It's horrible. They ran the ball a total of 11 times last night, and one of them was with Tyrod Taylor in garbage time when the game was over. I don't get their mindset. I don't get their game plan. They're trying to force the ball to Darren Waller too much. He had a few drops last night, but also Daniel Jones overthrew him a number of times. But they're trying to... Isaiah Hodgins, who was a guy they found last year on the scrap heap, who was really good, didn't have a catch last night. Didn't have a catch the entire game. He's the guy that's the game breaker for me in the offense. With the most upside, the guy that can do more things. He's only 24. This year, 1 catch for 24 yards against the Cowboys. Week 2, four receptions for 40 yards and a touchdown against Arizona. San Francisco, blank. Why is this the game plan? You're not using quarterback run. You're not using your weapons. Darren Waller is a great player, but the Chiefs don't force the ball to Travis Kelce, and they don't have good wide receivers either. San Francisco doesn't force the ball to George Kittle. Every team has a better receiving threat, the best one in your team. And yet, it's not, okay, every play I have to give the ball to him. Maybe other than Buffalo, because Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen feel like they have to, and that's what gets them in trouble. But you make your reads and you throw the ball to the player that is open, that is in the best route. And I think there's too much of this, okay, Darren Waller, we brought him over from Vegas, and Darren Waller's so talented. He's a great player, and he is. But look across the field. Paris Campbell's out there. You have Hodgins, Jalen Hyatt. You drafted from Tennessee. Can he play in the NFL? Can he run a deep route? Can you throw a goddamn go ball every once in a while? Could you use your screen game? Because you do have some speed, like San Francisco did every third play last night. Use the blockers in front of you. Use Darren Waller as a blocker. Give the ball to Jalen Hyatt. See if he can create something. I get it. It's a short week for the Giants, and you're playing arguably the best team in the NFL in San Francisco. So you don't have all the time in the world to prepare for this opponent. But the time you did have to prepare, I don't know what you prepared. You prepared and you said, you know what? We're going to prepare, and we're going to prepare to lose. We're going to prepare to lose to San Francisco, not keep this game competitive, not look competent, and get shellacked. And be okay with it. Basically is what they determined. And, credit to them for doing it. I don't understand the mindset or what they plan to do going in. But it was a complete failure. So now they go back to the drawing board, 1-2, playing next Monday night against Seattle, which is not an easy opponent. Not getting 100 yards of offense in 3 straight games. And for the Giants, you're 1-2. You play Seattle, and their schedule doesn't get easy. They then go to Miami. They go to Buffalo. Play the Commanders, which is no gimme anymore, in a divisional game. Jets, okay, maybe that's your gimme game over the next couple. The schedule is difficult. And you don't see any competency. You don't see a whole lot of confidence in the team. Dayball is losing his mind every time when there's a penalty called. The defensive line is taking penalties for the Giants, hitting Trent Williams last night. It was just a mess. So Thursday night's a tough one to gauge because most times both teams don't play that well because it's short week and because it's Thursday night football. But ultimately, San Francisco gets the win. They're at home and they improve to 3-0. And we're gearing up for week 4, so for week 5, where San Francisco plays the Dallas Cowboys. Two most impressive teams in the NFC so far will clash in week 5. San Francisco plays Arizona next weekend. There's a good game for them. Cowboys have the Patriots at home, another game that they should win. Week 5, Sunday Night Football in San Francisco, the most heated rivalry of the 1990s, is picking back up because they met in the postseason last year and San Fran beat them. And it went away for a while because San Francisco was bad, although they did get to a Super Bowl with Colin Kaepernick that nobody wants to remember, other than me. The Cowboys haven't been to an NFC Championship game since 1995. But these two teams, alongside the Eagles, are impressive groups. Talent on both sides of the ball. The deflating thing for the Cowboys in this tete-a-tete is yesterday at practice, 2021 All-Pro corner Trayvon Diggs tore his ACL. He's done for the season. Again, the script, as my friend Casey likes to describe it, the script for this NFL season has been horrible. It has not been a Shakespearean play. It's been a James Cameron-esque script where it's full of holes and miscues and there's incorrect grammar. The Nick Chubbs of the world, the Saquon Barkleys, the Trayvon Diggs, the Aaron Rodgers, all go down before week 3 has even commenced. And it's so unfortunate. Trayvon Diggs is on one side of the ball. On the other side, on the defense, you have Stephon Gilmore. They went out and got Stephon because they said, we need 2 corners that can play. They recently gave Trayvon Diggs 5 years, $90 million before the year started. He will come back. He's only 25 years old. But now the question comes, who's going to fill those holes? Noah Abekine, former Miami Dolphin, is on the roster. He's played corner. There's Deron Bland, who played some in relief last year. He likes to play nickel. He might have to play corner now that Trayvon Diggs is out. But something that's 100% a lock is the team won't be as good. You're missing a really important player that you can't replace. These people can come. They can play well. Dan Quinn is a great defensive coordinator. He will help make up for that deficiency. So right now they have Deron Bland listed at corner on the Cowboys depth chart. But you'll look at Jaron Kearse, at Donovan Wilson in the secondary to step up and help. Malik Hooker, if he can get snaps, to come in and play well. Jordan Lewis. The best thing about the Cowboys defense, the best thing about the Cowboys, is they have depth. They are one of the most talented groups, offense and defense, in the NFL. And despite the fact that Trayvon Diggs is done for the season, this does not mean the Cowboys are out on winning a Super Bowl. This does not mean they're the second best team in the NFC. They are right there with San Francisco. They are as good as anybody, and I said this before the season, and I stand by it despite the fact that this injury took place yesterday. The Cowboys have their best chance of winning a Super Bowl in a long, long time, maybe in my lifetime. The 2016 Cowboys team with rookie Dak and rookie Zeke was really good, but they were rookies. They were raw, and they ran into Aaron Rodgers, who beat them at Jerry World. That team was really good. But this one with CD, a flurry of tight ends, and Michael Gallup and Tony Pollard, and a defense that has more depth than ever before, this group is still very much on the precipice of greatness. And they just need to not be the Cowboys of the last nearly 30 years, and they could bring home the Lombardi this year. But it goes without saying, the injury to Trayvon Diggs hurts the team. They are not as good, and they'll have to deal with it going forward. Now, to the rest of the NFL. We have a lot of games this weekend. I mentioned we have some big spreads. So let's talk about them. This is a 2 o'clock game, and I think it is one of the most interesting games of the weekend. The 2-0 Atlanta Falcons at the 1-1 Detroit Lions in Detroit. Atlanta defeats Green Bay last week in an impressive fourth quarter comeback. And what interests me going into this game is you have Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, two rookie running backs, and two teams that have deployed these respective running backs in completely different methods. I love one, I hate the other. Atlanta, Bijan Robinson touched the ball 24 times last weekend. 19 carries for 124 yards, which is 6 yards per carry. Not too shabby. He also had 4 catches for 48 yards. Sounds kind of impressive. While Jahmyr Gibbs touched the ball 14 times, so 10 less touches, ran the ball 7 times, caught 7 passes. Here's the thing for Detroit. David Montgomery, running back 1, is out with an injury, and he's out this weekend, meaning Jahmyr Gibbs is number 1 running back on the depth chart, and one would think he's going to touch the ball more. What Arthur Smith is doing with Bijan Robinson is creative. The running schemes and just the way Bijan Robinson can avoid tackles. He is such an ultra-talented player. My thing is Detroit was so bad at stopping the run last year. And I say so bad, they were 31st in the NFL. They've done a better job this year. They did not lose to Seattle because Kenneth Walker Jr. III ran all over them. They lost that game because Geno Smith diced them up. And quite frankly, the pass rush could not get to him. Atlanta has a solid offensive line. Desmond Ridder is not a great quarterback. But he did enough last week to get the victory. Detroit spurned. They believe they should be 2-0, losing a game to Seattle. They should be lucky to be 1-1 because they lost to Seattle, and they should have lost to the Chiefs if Kadarius Toney knew how to catch a football in week 1. I love the running back matchup. Aiden Hutchinson, you have A.J. Terrell for the Falcons, who can really play. I think he'll be going up against Amon St. Brown. Detroit can put up points. We know this. Jared Goff rarely throws interceptions. He did throw a bad one last week, but it was the 3rd longest streak in NFL history without throwing an interception. So he doesn't make a whole lot of mistakes at the quarterback position, at least mistakes that will hurt the team. Atlanta, Algier, Desmond Ridder likes to move, and Bijan. They will want to run. They had 211 rushing yards last week against the Green Bay Packers. You know that Dan Campbell and the knee biters in Detroit are going to be looking at that film and saying, how can we stop the run? But Atlanta had 446 total yards. Desmond Ridder threw for 237. Detroit can stop the run, they will win this game because I don't trust Desmond Ridder to make big throws. If I'm Detroit and I win the toss, I want the ball to start the game because if I can get a lead, then Atlanta has to put the ball in Desmond Ridder's hands, and I'll take my chances. This is Bill Belichick 101. I want to eliminate your best weapon. You can go to your second, your third option. I don't care. But if I'm not going to swing in a fastball, then you have to throw something. You have to throw an off-speed pitch, and guess what? I feel more comfortable with that. You can get Atlanta +3 on the road, a 2-0 team. Detroit's 0-1 at home this season. I think this is a close game, but I think Detroit ultimately wins this game. Atlanta's an impressive 2-0, but I trust that offense in Detroit to show up. They can score points. They got a good receiving core. I trust that Ben Johnson, this is your week, buddy. Give Jahmyr Gibbs the football. Enough of this pussyfooting around. You drafted him 12th overall. Give him the ball. 20 touches at least on Sunday. More than that. I'll go as much to say I think between Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs, they will touch the football a combined 45 times. How's that? And I'm going to say Detroit does cover the number. Detroit -3 is the pick. One of the best games of the weekend. The Buffalo Bills at the undefeated Washington football team. The Bills screwed me last week when I took the Raiders, and the Bills destroyed them after the Raiders had a good first quarter. Washington is at home, and yet they're a 6.5-point home dog, which is interesting. Buffalo, Josh Allen played great last week. He did. They played their offense the way they want it to be used. James Cook actually touched the football. He ran for over 100 last week. Josh Allen threw a couple touchdown passes, one to Dawson Knox, another one to Stephon Diggs, and all is good in the world for the Bills. Washington has 2 wins this year by combined 5 points, which means they're winning a lot of close games. Sam Howell is completing 65.7% of his passes. He's got a cannon for an arm. They got pretty good skill position players. They're running better between the tackles. Here's my thing. I bet on the Bills last week, and they burned me. And I see +6.5, and I think Washington can cover the spread. Because I actually think Washington's pretty good. Darren Payne, Chase Young, Jonathan Allen, they can get to the quarterback. They can make it a difficult day for Josh Allen. There's still no Von Miller for Buffalo, and surprisingly, the Bills' pass rush has been pretty good through 2 weeks, all things considered, minus one of the best pass rushers in NFL history. So what do you do? The overreaction for week 1 was, well, the Bills are dead. They're still a very good team, and maybe I thought too much because I knew before the year started the Raiders weren't any good. And I stand by that opinion, even though I bet on them last week. So my head got in the way of just common sense. But I like Sam Howell. It's a big spot for him, a big spot for the team. They play in a division with the Cowboys, who are 2-0, with the Eagles, who are 2-0. You need to keep pace with the best of your division. I think the Bills are going to win this game. I'm going to start off by saying that. But if you can get a team at home at plus 6.5, I think this can be a field goal game. Washington stays in these games. They fought back against Denver last week on the road and ultimately won the game by 2 points. Sam Howell looks composed. He can throw the football down the field. So I think the Bills will win on Sunday afternoon in the nation's capital. But I think the Washington football team will cover the spread. I like it. Washington plus 6.5. We'll see if the Bills beat another number that I tell you to bet on. I will stop doing it. Until that happens, give me the football team. Denver Broncos at the Miami Dolphins. This very well could be the loser leaves town match for the Broncos. 0-2, 2 home losses by a combined 3 points. 2 awful second halves. And now you go play the Dolphins, who might have the most explosive offense in the NFL. The Broncos have the 29th ranked defense after the first 2 weeks. They're giving up big plays, chunk plays to different teams. Now you got to look around and say, oh shit, we got to do with Tyreek Hill. Jalen Waddle is in concussion protocol. He's unlikely to play this weekend. But you still have Tyreek. You have Braxton Berrios, who's pretty quick. Raheem Mostert, who's been explosive in the first couple weeks. River Craycraft. Cedric Wilson might actually be active for a game. Durham Smythe. The way this offense rolls, it doesn't really matter who's on the field. Tua will get the football to them. You have Bradley Chubb for the Dolphins playing his old team as Denver traded him to Miami at the trade deadline last season. So a revenge game for him. You have the Dolphins home opener. I think Sean Payton already hates Russell Wilson like most of the world. Sick of him being a diva. Sick of him being about himself, doing sit-ups on the plane, whatever else he has to do to make himself feel better. He's not understanding the play calls. He's not getting them in on time. The Dolphins' defense played better against the Patriots than they did in week 1. They stuffed the run, which they could not do against the San Diego Superchargers. So 6.5 seems like a big spread. As a person who used to root for the Dolphins, seeing the Dolphins as a 6.5-point home favorite makes me nearly faint because that has never happened in my lifetime since Marino was the quarterback. And I was in the womb when he was playing quarterback. But betting against the Fish offense, if you're saying, well, Miami's offense is going to fail, that's why they're going to lose this game, I think that's a stupid position. It might be the most dynamic offense in the NFL, and I'm betting on it to succeed, and I'll bet against Russell Wilson. I think the Broncos start the season 0-3, and I think the Fish win by at least a touchdown. Miami, minus 6.5. However, don't bet on this game because betting that home favorite just sucks. Houston Texans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. This game intrigues me. In week 1, I thought it was a good bet to bet on the Colts to cover the number against the Jags, which they did not. Came close in the third quarter. The Colts had the lead, but the Jags found a way. The Jags only put up 9 points last weekend against the Chiefs. They went 0-4 in the red zone, so they're coming into this game frustrated and pissed off. Houston, C.J. Stroud has looked pretty good. Has not thrown an interception yet. And I think he's been the best of the three rookie quarterbacks because he's going to be on the field. Well, we'll get to this in a minute. The other two rookie quarterbacks likely won't be on the field this coming weekend. I trust in Trevor Lawrence. He's 9-1 in his last 10 starts. Here's the splits for Trevor Lawrence. His last 13 games. Against the Chiefs, he's 0-3. In the other 10 games, he's 9-1. So he's 9-1 against the rest of the NFL and teams not named Kansas City. Well, Houston is not Kansas City. Houston is not nearly as talented as Kansas City, and CJ Stroud is a rookie. The Jags have weaknesses. We've seen them, but through 2 weeks, their defense has been solid. They played well against Kansas City, all things considered, only giving up 17 points at Arrowhead. I learned my lesson in week 1. I think the Prince, Trevor Lawrence, is going to bounce back. I think the Jags will win, and Houston just isn't as good of a team. I'd look to cover a spread when these two teams meet later in the season at Houston. But for right now, it's 8.5 for the Jags, and I don't believe that they will cover it. Jacksonville, minus 8.5. Indianapolis, same division, heading to Baltimore. Anthony Richardson, in concussion protocol, has not practiced this week. It looks like Gardner Minshew is starting Sunday afternoon in Maryland. Gardner Minshew is a solid quarterback. He is. He's one of the best backups in the entire NFL. Here's the problem. Baltimore's looked good through 2 weeks. Baltimore has looked really good through 2 weeks. They're going to be without OBJ as he's banged up, but that's not even that big of a deal. They still have Bateman, Duvernay, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews. They won a close one against Cincinnati, but they are 2-0, and Baltimore is chugging ahead. This is another 8.5-point spread. Baltimore's a good club. They got the talent. They might be without elite running backs at the moment, but I think their defense will hold up. They'll get to Minshew enough to frustrate him. Lamar will get some yardage with his legs. As much as I'd love to take Indianapolis in this game, it's a stupid bet. Baltimore minus 8.5. Los Angeles Chargers at Minnesota Vikings. This truly is a loser leaves town match. Two teams that have a combined 0 wins. Both 0-2 entering this football game. Chargers losing narrowly to the Dolphins and then losing in overtime to Tennessee. Minnesota losing by 3 points to Tampa Bay and then losing by 6 to the Philadelphia Eagles. So honestly, this game surprised me when I saw the line. The Vikings are a 1.5-point home favorite, and I didn't think they would be. Yes, the Chargers, it looks like they're going to be without Austin Eckler for a second week, which hurts them. But I did not think the gambling world would have faith in Kirk D. Cousins. Minnesota's added Cam Akers to the running back room, kind of replacing Alexander Mattison. Kirk has been phenomenal through 2 weeks. Most passing yards in the NFL. He's throwing the ball over the field, yet they're 0-2. The defense for Minnesota hasn't exactly been there. And the Chargers defense has not been good either. They both have great quarterbacks. They both have weapons that are healthy. At the moment, obviously, Jefferson is the biggest X factor. He's the best wide receiver in the NFL. J.C. Jackson hasn't been great through 2 weeks. We'll see what he can do against him. I think the Chargers, top to bottom, are a better team than the Minnesota Vikings. Both teams were playoff teams last year, and both teams lost in the wild card round. I said this on Monday that if the Chargers lose this game, Brandon Staley would be fired on the following Monday if they began the season 0-3. And I stand by that opinion. For Minnesota, they're not going to fire Kevin O'Connell. But will they explore options with Kirk Cousins? Do they put him on the trade block? Would the Jets call the Vikings if they're 0-3 and the Jets are 1-2 with Zach Wilson? All interesting things to consider, for sure. 1.5 point Vikings spread. I think the Chargers are actually going to win this game for some reason. I don't see them starting 0-3. I don't trust Brandon Staley. I don't trust Justin Herbert all that much. Yes, they're without Austin Eckler. And I like Kirk D. Cousins even more after watching the quarterback documentary. But I think the Chargers will win this game. At the very least, I think they'll cover one. Maybe they lose by a point. Because that would be so Chargers if they do that. But give me Los Angeles Chargers plus 1.5 as the road dog. New England Patriots at the New York Jets. Battle of the AFC East. The Jets, a team with a win this year, are 2.5 point home underdogs. New England doesn't have a win, are favorites at MetLife. Zach Wilson starting again for the Jets. They're frustrated all week with Breece Hall not touching the ball enough and their game plan against the Dallas Cowboys. Patriots losing a close one on Sunday Night Football. Mac Jones has played decent through the first 2 weeks, but their offense is so mundane. It's so boring. So how do you really take anything from it? No huge injuries in this game for either team that should really affect the spread other than Aaron Rodgers, of course. Here's my thinking. Zach Wilson's not a good NFL quarterback. He's proven that. But the Jets can run the football effectively. They play good they might have given up 30 points last week to Dallas, but they play good defense. Saw Dan Patrick mention earlier in the week, I thought their defense is really... They didn't allow a touchdown in the second half, Dan. Just saying. And Zach Wilson had a 3-and-out every time he touched the football, seemingly. So I thought they played pretty well, all things considered. The Patriots don't have a good offense. The Patriots turn the ball over. Mac Jones, at least once a game, will throw you a pizza that ends up in the hands of the opposing team's corner, as will Zach Wilson. So I think both teams will turn the ball over. Garrett Wilson is going to play. Breece Hall is going to play. Dalvin Cook is going to play. Williams for the Jets, Sauce Gardner. The Jets went 7-9 last year with Zach Wilson. So that means they won some games that you didn't expect them to win. And they found a way to do it through all parts of their team. They had such a bad game plan against the Cowboys. I think they'll be more well prepared going into this one. Division game, so it's going to be close. And I don't even know if the Jets win it. But plus 2.5, I think it's worth the risk. Give me the Jets plus 2.5 at home to keep it close, and they might just win the game. New Orleans at Green Bay. Another interesting game for me. Green Bay is a 1.5 point home favorite. They completely blew the game against the Falcons. They had that win and they gave it up. Elton Jenkins, David Bakhtiari, two members of their offensive line, are unlikely to play this coming weekend. However, Aaron Jones practiced. He's going to be available, and it sounds like Christian Watson, arguably the best wide receiver on Green Bay's roster, will be making his season debut. Now, for New Orleans, their offense has been putrid through 2 weeks, yet they're 2-0. No Alvin Kamara yet. He'll be back after this weekend. Derek Carr has not looked great. This will be an outdoor game, obviously, in Green Bay, so that the elements are different. You love Michael Thomas and Chris Olave and Shaheed. New Orleans can be a really dangerous team, and I think they'll continue to get better and better as the season goes on. But I like that Green Bay will have both their running backs back in the lineup, the two-headed monster. Jordan Love is a competent quarterback. I like his game. He's been confident. He's played well through the first 2 weeks. I think we'll see two defenses duel. Jair Alexander at corner, Marshawn Lattimore at corner for New Orleans, Demario Davis, Cam Jordan, Rashawn Gary, Quay Walker, who can just flat out ball, Devondre Campbell for the Packers. So I don't know if this is a high-scoring game. You might see two defenses play extremely well at Lambeau, and a couple touchdown drives might ultimately win this game. New Orleans will get better, I think, if Derek Carr can put all the pieces there. He doesn't have to be special, but he at least needs to be good. Home field, give me Green Bay -1.5 on Sunday. Tennessee at the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland will obviously without Nick Chubb, done for the season. Jack Conklin, the right tackle, done for the season. So now it's Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt who will carry the football. And for Kevin Stefanski, running the ball still has to be the nucleus of this team. And leading into play action for Deshaun Watson, because quite frankly, he cannot carry this team unless they have a strong running game, because his play has just been that putrid. They need to run the ball. They need to create open lanes for him because it needs to be simplistic. It needs to be easy because he's not understanding concepts. He's not understanding how to read a defense, and just his overall skill, his ability to escape from the pocket is not what it used to be. So, Tennessee had a bounce back against the Chargers. And Cleveland has a good defense, as does Tennessee. Both teams can get to the quarterback, can get sacks. Deshaun Watson was sacked 5 times by the Steelers. Jeffrey Simmons is no picnic in the middle of that defense for Tennessee. He can get to the quarterback as well. Ryan Tannehill, Deshaun Watson, two guys that are not all that different. At their worst, they are horrible. At their best, they can play. Tannehill, 20 for 24, 246. That's about what you expect. Derrick Henry got 25 carries. Tajay Spears got 8. And Tannehill rushed the ball once for a 12-yard touchdown. So two teams that are relying on their running game to spark offensive plays. Cleveland's a good team at home. But the first game without Nick Chubb, they're a very good team, but they're a different team without Nick Chubb. They just are. And I don't trust Deshaun Watson enough to put faith in him to go out and play. I wish he was the one with the broken leg and not Nick Chubb, because Nick Chubb doesn't deserve it. Deshaun Watson deserves to get hit by a Mack truck. But unfortunately, that's not the way the world works. Tennessee's better than people think. Tannehill is not perfect, but he's as good. The way he's playing currently, he's as good as Deshaun Watson. And Mike Vrabel, I trust more as a head coach to game plan and be ready than I do Kevin Stefanski. Tajay Spears, I love him as this number 2 running back. He can create holes. He's a guy that will spark a few plays in this game for Tennessee. A close one in the dog pound. I think Tennessee at least keeps it close. It's a field goal game. Tennessee plus 3.5. Carolina at Seattle. We'll keep this one short and sweet. Bryce Young out for the Panthers. The Carolina Panthers might have the worst offensive line in the NFL. The Carolina Panthers might have the worst skill position players in the NFL, as you saw in Monday Night Football. Bryce Young can escape. Bryce Young can continue to create plays with his legs. He's not playing. Andy Dalton will be starting for the Panthers. No, he's not retired. He's now with Carolina. He cannot continue a play. He can't use his athleticism to create plays in the open field. I think he gets sacked a ton, even though Seattle's pass rush isn't the elite of the elite. I think they'll have a good day. Seattle's a 6.5-point home favorite. Offensively, they can do it all, and Carolina does have a solid defense. Brian Burns is a stud, and they have some good players back there. But Seattle at home, that raucous crowd, good feelings again after you go into Detroit and get a big victory. Give me Seattle minus 6.5. Then there's these games. 2 games at 5:25 that really don't make you that excited to watch football. Game number 1, the Chicago Bears at the Kansas City Chiefs. Chicago this week. Justin Fields says, well, it's not really about my play, it's about the play calling, it's the coaching that sucks. He then had to walk back those comments, and they pretend that everything's hunky-dory with him and offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, which clearly they're not because the team's been incompetent and they're 0-2 and he's feeling the pressure. Also this week, the defensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears, Alan Williams, resigned, and then his house was raided by the FBI, and we don't really know why yet. But he resigned, and then his house gets raided, meaning something's happening with him that isn't up to code, that isn't above board, if you will. So the Bears, as they always are a complete shit show, and they have to go into Arrowhead Stadium to play the Super Bowl champs. Now, here's what you need to know about the Bears. Kansas City loses to Detroit and then only beats Jacksonville by 8 points. And they are a 12.5 home favorite against the Bears. Receivers haven't found their groove yet. Mahomes in the passing game. Here's the thing. Kansas City's defense has been awesome. Awesome through the first couple weeks. Chris Jones is back. The corners have played pretty well. Karlaftis is starting to take a step for the Chiefs. Their defense is top 5 in the NFL through 2 weeks in nearly every metric. The Bears' offense is bottom in every metric you can look at. That doesn't bode well. If an offense is going to come together, it's Kansas City's against Chicago because Chicago is Chicago. Seeing 12.5 points, you know how much that makes me want to bet on the 12.5? Because that's my deal. I love underdogs. I love betting on this and seeing it. And it's such a tease because you see the number and it makes you angry. Here's my advice if you're going to gamble on this game. Don't take 12.5 because they're not going to cover 12.5. My thinking is tease it. Tease this. Tease it up to 15. add some points. Then maybe look at betting it. You go to your sports book, you can tease a bet. Just look it up, tease it, get that number up to maybe 14 and a half, 15. Go above 14 because you don't want to push. But make sure it's a half, 14 and a half, maybe even 15. Because maybe the Chiefs win by 2 touchdowns, and they shut Mahomes down, and it's Blaine Gabbert coming in. They're just running the football. And the Bears lose by 14 points, and they're incompetent. But that's my thinking. Do I think the Bears will cover the 12 and a half? I do not. Do I think they could cover 14 and a half? Maybe. The next game, the Dallas Cowboys at the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona has not been terrible through the first 2 weeks, although they are 0-2. They played a hard-fought game in week 1 where they were competitive, and they lost by 4 points to the 2-0 Washington Commanders. So, perfect for them. Then in week 2, they go out and they play another game that is at least respectable. They play the Giants and they lose by 3 points. And at one point, they had a massive lead. 20-0 at the half. But Dallas comes to Arizona. Dallas has the best defense in the NFL, you could argue. Micah Parsons is a human wrecking ball right now. Yes, they're without Trayvon Diggs, but I don't think there's receivers in Arizona that are really going to scare Dallas all that much. Dak Prescott has been very efficient, is what I describe him as, through 2 weeks. I don't think he's been great, like some people have been saying, but he hasn't thrown an interception through his first 2 games, and he had 15 last year. They're running the football a ton. They have a good balance of run and pass, giving CeeDee Lamb the ball, getting certain guys involved, touchdown passes to 2 tight ends. So, another 12.5 point spread, and this one, Arizona's a 12.5 point home underdog. I think Dallas is too good. I think Dallas, they've already won a game 40-0. They beat the Jets by 20. I think their start to the season of just pure demolition will continue. Yes, this is not a New York team. They've been doing it against the Big Apple. But unfortunately for Arizona, they're running into a buzzsaw, and they're going to get their head cut off. Dallas, minus 12.5. Do not gamble on this game. Not worth. Juice is not worth the squeeze on a 12.5 point home favorite. And the nightcap on Sunday, the Pittsburgh Steelers head to Sin City to play the Las Vegas Raiders. First of all, why is this Sunday Night Football? It's not the greatest week of games. I will argue. So you get this in week 3. Vegas destroyed by the Bills. Pittsburgh wins an ugly one on Monday Night Football where they should have lost to Cleveland, but they found a way to win. And now Vegas is a 2.5 point home favorite. Jacoby Myers, who had a concussion, missed week 2, should be back for the Raiders. Minka Fitzpatrick will be a game-time decision after he was banged up in the beginning of the second half against the Browns. Unclear if he will play. Still no Cam Hayward for the Steelers. Still no Deontay Johnson. Kenny Pickett's been awful. Jimmy Garoppolo has not been superb to start the season, but he's been better than Kenny Pickett. But then again, the Raiders only put up 10 points last weekend. Jimmy Garoppolo had 2 interceptions. Josh Jacobs ran the ball 9 times for -2 yards. Michael Mayer, the rookie tight end, is not being put on the field all that much. Austin Hooper had 2 catches. He had 1 for 2 yards. So you love Devontae and you like the way they're using him, and Josh Jacobs had 5 catches. But the Raiders are a little perplexing to me. I'd steer clear of this one. This game scares me. I have no really clue where this game is going. Because I like the Steelers' defense more than I like Vegas' defense, for certain. The Raiders do not have a great offensive line. TJ Watt is a game wrecker, and Alex Highsmith, just like they did against Cleveland, they could create turnovers. Jimmy Garoppolo is prone to make mistakes. And before you know it, Pittsburgh wins a game 21-20, and Kenny Pickett throws for $184 and a touchdown interception. That very well could happen. Pittsburgh, unfortunately for them, they gave the ball to Najee Harris way too much, so their running game isn't all that explosive. Matt Canada is one of the worst offensive coordinators in the entire league, so both teams have flaws. I thought the Steelers would be better. They haven't been through 2 weeks. If I had to lean one way, I'd take the Steelers plus 2.5 because of their defense and their ability to create turnovers. Garoppolo's been better than Pickett, but I do think there's some game wreckers that could make this interesting for the Steelers on defense. But like I said, I wouldn't bet on this game. It's a Sunday night. It's a weird game. But Steelers plus 2.5. To college football. College football is better than the NFL this weekend, for sure. Because there's some really important games that will decide the future of the college football playoff later in the year, but it could also knock out a bunch of teams this weekend. An important game early in the day for different reasons. Auburn at Texas A&M. Texas A&M already has a loss, losing to the University of Miami. They can't afford to lose this game. They've already said they'll buy out Jimbo Fisher, the coach, if this season does not go well. Auburn's not a perfect team by any means. They now have Peyton Thorne at quarterback, who has played a long time at Michigan State. He wasn't that great of a quarterback there, all things considered. But he is a guy that has a lot of experience in college football. They're a team that has been, I would say, surprising to start the year. They haven't lost yet. They haven't had the toughest of competition. They turn the ball over. A&M's an 8.5-point home favorite. I think Auburn covers the spread. Give me Auburn plus 8.5. Florida State at Clemson. Florida State nearly lost to Boston College last week, but they avoided disaster. Clemson already has suffered a loss this year against Duke. FSU is the better team. They're more talented. They just need to avoid stupid mistakes. Jordan Travis is better than Cade Klubnik. Clemson is a 2.5-point home dog, which never happens in this era with Dabo Swinney. Again, ACC matchup. It's going to be close. A really important game for both sides. Give me FSU minus 2.5 as the favorite. Kentucky at Vanderbilt. Kentucky's still undefeated, under the radar. Devin Leary, since transferring over, has been really good, quietly. Vandy, not a great team, plus 13.5, but I'll take Kentucky with the points. Oklahoma at Cincinnati. Oklahoma, again, they haven't had the toughest of competition, but they're putting up 60 points a week. Cincinnati, I thought, would be undefeated going into this game, but they got upset by BYU last week. Oklahoma, first big game of the year where they can showcase themselves. They're playing on Fox tomorrow afternoon. Give me Oklahoma minus 14.5. They will score at least 50 tomorrow. Rutgers at Michigan. Michigan has been thoroughly unimpressive, but this is their first Big Ten game of the season. Jim Harbaugh is going to be back on the sideline after serving his suspension. The team will be motivated, and Rutgers is 3-0, but they are the worst 3-0 team in the nation because they stink. I saw them play once against Northwestern, and it was not pretty. Michigan will win this. It's a 24.5-point spread, and you know I'd love to bet on Rutgers, but they're not going to cover it. Michigan. SMU at Texas Christian. SMU has had a big week. They've raised $100 million in 7 days as they go to the ACC next year from boosters to attract talent to make them more competitive. They're not that bad this year. TCU already has a loss to Colorado. They're not a great team. It's a rebound year after getting to the national championship game and everything going right for them. I'm not sure TCU loses this game. I think SMU will go in and cover these 6.5. Give me SMU plus 6.5. BYU at Kansas. We just talked about it. BYU last week playing Cincinnati. You look around and go, okay, BYU, a program that's always been there. Sorry, they beat Arkansas. I knew it was a big win. Keaton Slovis, who's on his 18th team. Not really, but he's on his 4th team in college. He's now at BYU. They went into Arkansas, played the Razorbacks, and beat KJ Jefferson and company. They now go to Kansas. Kansas went from 1 win to 7 wins last year in an impressive turnaround for that program. They got a good quarterback at Kansas. They're both teams are undefeated, and it's a very good game. Not easy to play at Kansas, not easy to win there. They get a great home crowd, and I like the Kansas team. They went to Nevada last weekend and won. Here's the thing. It's a 9.5-point spread. I don't understand why it's so large. I think this is one of the gimmies of the week. Maybe BYU does not win the game, but I think BYU will cover the spread. They'll get a win against a Big 12 school and an SEC school in the same year. BYU plus 9.5. Well, maybe they won't win, but they'll cover the spread. Game of the weekend, many people would argue. Coach Prime and his Colorado Buffaloes at Oregon. No Travis Hunter. He's out with a lacerated liver after the dirty hit last week against Colorado State. Oregon at home is very tough to deal with. Bo Nix is a great quarterback in his own right. Oregon has a better offensive line. Oregon has a better defensive line. You could argue that they have better running backs. They have more people that can create. Colorado's 3-0. And anybody who expects them to beat Oregon this week and then beat USC the following weekend just don't know what they're talking about. But it's a great story nonetheless. Doesn't change the fact that Deion Sanders has been amazing. Oregon is a 21-point favorite. Now, if you want to bet Colorado outright, that's a stupid bet because I'm going to tell you right now, they're not going to win the game. They're not going to win the game, but can they cover? Can Shedeur Sanders keep it close without Travis Hunter? They still have Xavier Weaver, and they still have Harrison, the tight end, who I love, who's going to be an NFL player. I'm betting on Coach Prime not to win, but I'm betting on Coach Prime to cover. Give me Colorado plus 21. Maryland at Michigan State. Michigan State head coach has to leave because of his actions that we've talked about. Their program's in disarray. This got smoked by the University of Washington. Maryland is 3-0 quietly. Tua Tagovailoa's brother, Talia, goes to Maryland. They're pretty good. And Michigan State's a 7.5-point home underdog. Maryland has struggles in the first half, then they blow people out. Likely the same thing will happen. I think Maryland wins by at least 10 points. Maryland, minus 7.5. Another huge game this weekend. Ole Miss at Alabama. Lane Kiffin, the former offensive coordinator for one Nick Saban for a couple of years, won a national championship together. He's now at Ole Miss with Jackson Dart and Judkins and a bunch of really good skill position players. And Alabama just won 17-3 against South Florida in one of the worst losses in the Saban era, one could argue, which I will. Now, Lane Kiffin, he's an eccentric guy. He walks to the beat of his own drum, if you will. He's got opinions on everything, so I appreciate that about him, because I know a guy like that. God, it's annoying when you know somebody who's just got an opinion about everything, right? You just hate those people. I know I do. As if you couldn't tell, I'm talking about myself. Ole Miss beat Georgia Tech 48-23 last weekend. Jackson Dart, starting quarterback. He can run the ball as well quite effectively. Bentley, the running back. Judkins, another running back. They like to run the football at Ole Miss. Alabama is turning back to Jalen Milroe, who was benched last weekend. He's the quarterback with the most athleticism. It's the only option that they have. Alabama's already lost a game at Alabama. They hadn't had a loss at Alabama since Joe Burrow in 2019. So they might have two in 2 weeks. And it's Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. If that happens, the world's going to explode in Tuscaloosa. Yet they're a 7-point favorite, and that seems really high to me, given what they put on the field the last number of weeks, which has been god-awful. Ole Miss is going to want to run the football, which you could argue that's what Alabama has done the best. They've given up big plays to Quinn Ewers. They've given up big plays to even quarterbacks last year, like Jaden Daniels at LSU. That's what led to their losses. Stopping the run has not been the issue. I think Alabama is going to find a way to win this game. I do think it's going to be close. I do think Lane Kiffin will get his shots in. He knows the opportunity this is for him in the SEC to win that side of the conference after having a great start last year and losing the last 5 games on the schedule. I like Ole Miss +7. And as I say that, I quiver because it's Nick Saban. But that team just isn't very good. And I'm not putting faith in them. Another awesome game. UCLA at Utah. Cam Rising has not played this year yet after having ACL surgery last year. He's unknown if he's going to play this week. No word yet. I looked it up yesterday, and there's no 100% yet on Cam Rising. Now, their backup quarterback has come in and played good football. This is the coach. Coach Winningham said he looked good today. Wow, that tells me a lot. And this is a report. Utah will make call Thursday on Cam Rising's availability versus UCLA. Well, it's Friday, and there's no word yet. Nate Johnson will start if Cam Rising is out. And he's been good since coming in. UCLA has this true freshman, Dante Moore. They have some really special weapons at UCLA. I like the team a lot. They're fun to watch. They can do a lot of things creatively on the football field. And I think they've been better than people have expected them. They're 3-0 to start the year. They can run the ball. They have a wide receiver that they've hardly used in Sturdivant, who's good. Brown is solid. Playing in Utah is tough. Utah has won back-to-back Pac-12 titles, and part of the reason is because playing in Provo is deadly. In particular, for a true freshman to go there and expect to get a victory, hard to imagine. Here's the thing. If Cam Rising doesn't play, Nate Johnson has been very solid. And I think Utah is going to win the game. But I expect close games this weekend. And I like UCLA, and I trust in Chip Kelly to battle. UCLA will not win, but I think they cover the 5.5. UCLA plus 5.5. Arkansas at LSU. Arkansas, brutal loss last weekend at BYU. LSU, Jaden Daniels was the player of the week. 17.5 is a huge number. I don't trust Arkansas to cover it. They've lost all their momentum. LSU wins big. Oregon State at Washington State. Another two teams undefeated in the best conference, the Pac-12. Oregon State, the Beavers, DJU has been solid in the first 3 weeks. Washington State with Cameron Ward has been really good as well. Two teams that you don't hear about a lot. They're on the periphery. Washington State beat Northern Colorado last week 64-21, so they can put up points. Cameron Ward, 20 for 26, 327, 4 touchdowns, which not too shabby. They added Victor, who a transfer wide receiver. He caught 2 touchdowns last week. You look at Oregon State, they might not be as explosive, but they play solid defense. They don't make a whole lot of mistakes. DJU. Here's my thought, though. Washington State played Wisconsin and beat them in prime time. And I don't think a lot of people expected Washington State to win that game, but they did. They're a home dog again. And Oregon State's been a tough team to play, but Oregon State's tougher to play at home in particular. I'm going to trust my guy Louis Riddick. He said look out for Washington State, and he said they're one of the best, they're going to be one of the better teams come the end of the year that nobody realizes. I'm going to take Washington State +3 at home in this game. Another can't miss primetime game. Iowa at Penn State. Battle of the Big Ten. If you don't watch college football, tune into this game. It's on CBS, I believe, Saturday night. Just look at it. It's a night game. It's called the all-white game where they all wear the white shirts. It's incredible in that stadium. The noise that they make in Penn State, it's a phenomenal thing. They had that game against Auburn a few years ago with Bo Nix, and it was so loud. It's just truly a spectacle for college football, so tune in for that. Iowa can't score. They always have a great defense. They brought in a new quarterback, but they still are not a great offense. Sure, they've beaten Iowa State, and they've got by a few different games. Penn State struggled against Illinois for a while, but they can turn the ball over. Drew Aller is a solid prospect. They got good weapons. They need to find a way to run the football more effectively. It's a 14.5 point spread. It's big. I will argue that for sure, that it's a huge spread. Because if you look at the game last weekend, they won the game by 17 against Illinois. And Illinois couldn't play offense. Just couldn't do it. Altmaier had 4 interceptions, and they had 5 turnovers as an offense in total. Now, Iowa is not much better. Now, they are more explosive. They put up 41 last week, but Cade McNamara had 103 yards passing, completed 9 passes, and had 2 interceptions, but they ran the football well. So Penn State knows what Iowa's going to want to do, and will have to shut it down. If I trusted Iowa's offense even a little bit, I would take them to cover this spread, but it's the all-white game. They're at home. It's going to be incredibly loud. I think Penn State wins running away with it. Give me Penn State minus 14.5. Ohio State at Notre Dame. Friend of the podcast, Matt Wright. I know this will be the game that he is focused on because it's his Irish against the team he hates the most, Ohio State. At least I think he does. Yeah, he definitely hates them more than Alabama. Maybe he hates Michigan. I don't know. He hates a lot of them. But he definitely hates Ohio State. Notre Dame, as I told him, I like Notre Dame. They're good. Sam Hartman's 29 years old. Not really, but he looks it. And he's played well. They get a good running game, a solid offensive line. While Ohio State has had their trials and tribulations through the first couple weeks of the season, but they're starting to put it together. They have their starting quarterback. They have Marvin Harrison Jr. healthy. They're starting to run the football better. And their defense was solid last week against Western Kentucky. Now, this is the game in South Bend. It's a huge, huge game, massive stakes for both teams. However, I will argue, whoever loses this game, their season's not dead because they still will be in the driver's seat to have one loss and still be in position to make the playoff. Normally, Notre Dame doesn't have a chance to win this game. They didn't have a chance to beat Ohio State last year. Their defense was so great, so it kept it close. But that Notre Dame team was not good. This year, you had Estime. You get the transfer Hartman. You had some good pieces to your defense. And all of a sudden, you look around and go, well, we got a shot. And we're at home. The crowd's behind us. The biggest game of our season. We put ourselves on the map. 3-point home underdogs. Kyle McCord, this is how you make your career at Ohio State. You go out there and ball this weekend. You're the number one. People are confident in you, and they'll look and say, you know what? We have a guy that can finally go beat Michigan after 2 years of failure. Ohio State won last year in Ohio State. There's a reason this number is so close, and it's because Notre Dame's pretty damn good themselves. I want to gamble on this game. I'll put it that way. There's a lot of these games in college that are fun to gamble on this weekend. Everyone I've said, I truly believe every pick I make. I don't just say it to blow smoke up your guys' ass. Notre Dame is a good team. So is Ohio State. But for some reason, this year Notre Dame feels a little better. And Ohio State might go out and blow them out. Because Kyle McCord might say, okay, I'm finally here. This is why I was a 5-star recruit and I came to Ohio State to get to the NFL. But Sam Hartman's also there for a reason. He believes he can be an NFL quarterback. And he wants to show up and show out to all the people. Give me Notre Dame +3 in South Bend. Texas at Baylor. This is a crazy spread. Normally, you look around and this would be a 3-point spread. Baylor has been so pathetic this year that Texas is a 14.5 road favorite. Baylor losing to North Texas in week 1, and now you look around and go, whoa. What happened to Baylor? What happened to the program that was so competitive for a long time? They're losing people. Transfer portal's not helping. Texas played Wyoming last weekend. I knew Wyoming would cover that spread. I told Matt Wright that on text. I don't know if he bet on them because he didn't sound all that confident in your boy, but they did cover the spread. While Baylor has been struggling to really compete with anybody. Texas remains firmly in the college football playoff race. 14.5. I still like them a lot. Give me Texas minus 14.5. North Carolina at Pitt. Another game that could be interesting, but Pitt it doesn't have a quarterback. They can't produce offense. North Carolina minus 7.5. USC Nightcaps at Arizona State. USC is a 34.5 road favorite. 34.5 points, and I want to bet on Arizona State, but they're 1-2, and they stink. And USC has just been crushing people because their offense is that lethal. USC, don't bet on it. Cal at Washington. Cal, 20.5 point road dogs. I'm surprised it's not a bigger number because Washington's pretty damn good. Washington will cover that number, so they win that game. If I had to go through these games that are just Auburn A&M, really interesting. FSU, certainly. BYU, Kansas, yep. Colorado game, yep. Ole Miss, yep. UCLA, yes. Arkansas, yes. Oregon State game, Iowa, Ohio State. There are some games this weekend. We have a spread of great college football to dive into. And it's going to be awesome. And I can't wait to watch it tomorrow. And those are the best bets. Before we wrap today, UFC this weekend at the Apex. Rafael Fiziev, Mateus Gamrot, lightweight main event. You have a great striker against an elite grappler, wrestler in the division in Gamrot. Gamrot's a plus 130 underdog. This one could go either way. For me, Fiziev just punches so hard. He said he learned a lot in that fight with Justin Gaethje in what not to do. I think he bounces back. I like Fiziev via KO. Co-main event, you have Thug Nasty Bryce Mitchell against Dan Ige. Bryce Mitchell coming off his first UFC loss to Ilia Topuria, which is no slouch because Ilia is great in the featherweight division. 50K has won his last two fights, beating Nate Landwehr and Damon Jackson. Just the way he strikes, Bryce is going to want to get this fight to the ground, grappling exchanges, and put him in submissions. I think Bryce bounces back. This is a good fight for him. I like Dan Ige. I think he's a really good striker. Just the way watching one of his last fight against Nate Landwehr this week, he puts himself in positions where he can easily be taken down, and I worry about that happening in this fight. Marine Rodriguez, Michelle Waterson, a rematch. Two veterans of the sport for the women. I think Marine Rodriguez wins that by decision. Brian Battle, AJ Fletcher, Battles won his last two fights via knockout. That will continue. And Charles Jourdain, the Canadian, I think will win again this weekend. So, baseball home stretch, NHL preseason beginning, NFL, college football. It's all happening right now. It's a great time to be alive. The weather's not terrible. First day of fall, which I could do without. Not excited about that whatsoever. But not much we can do about it, folks. Anything else happening at the moment before we sign off? Andy Dalton officially confirmed, and Gardner Minshew officially confirmed for this weekend for the Panthers and the Colts. Michael Anlauer finally has finalized the sale of the Ottawa Senators. Only took about 3 months. Let's see. But not much else currently happening at the moment. So that's the weekend that's coming up. Hope you guys enjoy it. I know I will. And we'll reconvene on Monday to recap it all. So until then, take care, stay healthy, have some fun. I'm Noah Warren. This is To The Point.